What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about 5 reasons you should be excited for Stellar Blade. I felt this would be kind of a different video. You know, we're about 2 weeks out. This is the right time to do something like this. So let's just jump into it and start with number 1, and we'll also get the obvious thing out of the way first. Number 1 reason to be excited about this game, Eve herself. It's hard to ignore, and you know what? At this point, why ignore it? They've talked about it so much. The internet has talked about it so much. Yes, these characters are attractive. Now, I've seen actually plenty of conversation online talking about, hey, if this was like more of the norm, if more games did this kind of stuff, this wouldn't even be a thing. And I actually would agree with that. I would also say that like this is not the first like attractive cast in video games, so there's also been that in the past, but it is something that I think you do have to be real with it. They've talked about it as a studio where like they know what they want. I mean, like they've talked about how these characters look, and that's kind of how they want their video game characters to look, is almost like better than them. And they've also talked about what like we will see. Like we will see these characters a lot. We'll see Eve a lot. And they wanted to do us a favor, I guess, in that respect, right? So I do want to throw that out there. It is a big deal, and I do absolutely acknowledge that. I've long said that it's not like the main thing for me. I actually think the combat is the thing that I'm most excited about. But, you know, everybody talks about how the characters look. I think it is a reason, like a factual reason, people are going to be getting it. So, of course, I wanted to throw that in. So, for number 2, let's stick with this eye candy, but let's just go for visuals in general. The trailers always looked really good. The small snippets of gameplay we had always looked really good. The demo really, I think, solidified to me that like this is gonna be, is it gonna be the greatest looking game of all time? No, but this is probably in that top like 10-15%. The game looks stunning, whether it's the enemy design we talked about, you know, the main character or any of the characters. The beginning, you know, of the demo reminds a lot of people of the opening of Mass Effect 3. Just imagine the beginning of Mass Effect 3, but in 2024 with those visuals, explosions, and the terrain, and just how things look. I kept commenting, because I'm a big water freak, that Eve in water, the water in this game looks freaking fantastic. Underwater, when she's just swimming, the way things react to you. I think this game is going to be a looker, right? Hellblade, and it's not to make it a PlayStation versus Xbox. Please don't do that. I'm really excited for Hellblade 2. Hellblade 2 has a lot of talk because of how good it looks, and it absolutely does. Stellar Blade, I'm not saying it's going to look better. I do maybe think Hellblade is going to come out on top there, but I think Stellar Blade might surprise people with how good it looks, because you just maybe have never heard of Shift Up, or you think, well, is this game really going to be more than just Eve as a character, the character model? No, this game looks like it's going to be quite beautiful from beginning to end. Okay, number 3, my personal one, so let's get into it a little bit. Combat. I really believe the combat in this game is going to be, at the end of the game, when you're on Twitter and you're on social media and you're watching my videos, of course, hopefully, right? We're going to be talking about combat, right? Because the demo, to me, solidified how good the combat in this game is. And it definitely has divided some people. I think not everybody kind of knew what to expect with it. And I will agree with some kind of points brought up. If you were to watch it, and you watch even some of the trailers, if you watch somebody else play the demo, kind of sparingly, I wouldn't say like hugely in depth, it does look like it's faster than it really is. The game's slower. The game is more strategic. The game is about looking at enemy movements and trying to master the perfect dodge and perfect parry. Like, that is such a big part, of it. And I will say, you look back to some of the very first time that we saw the combat, I don't know if it was like in front of our faces, like just like literally 2 feet in front of us, like, hey, this is how the game is going to operate. I wouldn't say that. I did always get the sense that the combat was going to be more in-depth than what people thought, but, it does remind me of some of, like, the Soulsborne stuff. It reminds me, I mentioned it from the demo, it reminds me a little bit about the Jedi franchise. Somebody brought that up to me. Somebody said it reminds me of Jedi Survivor, and since they said that and I played the demo, I haven't been able to get that out of my head. Like, the different, now, like, in there you have the different stances or, like, saber styles, but it's very similar of, kind of like walking backwards and circling the enemy and waiting for their attack and whatnot. It does remind me of that. And as we've seen in the demo, all of the abilities and how you play in the beginning of the demo versus the end in the boss kind of unlock thing is very different. So to me, it's very clear that the game is going to expand and just kind of become, I would argue, maybe better, right? Like, there's going to be more depth to it as you go through. So you'll be fighting at the end of this game, enemies, bosses, whatever, and you'll be operating, I would say, pretty differently than you were in the beginning of the game. They've said that before, but then we were actually able to see it, I think, live in front of our eyes in the demo. Okay, number 4, I'm going to call the game setup. And what I mean by this is literally just how the game actually is. So this is where we get to throw in how I think Shift Up has won over a lot of people just in their words, right? So they've talked about Eve and they've talked about the characters and their looks, but they've also kind of talked about single-player games, right? And an ending to them and all this jazz. And look, actions speak louder than words. That's true in the gaming industry, almost as true as it is in life, okay? You can say and promise all you want in games. If the game comes out and it doesn't deliver, you still failed. I believe that. And I would say that for this game. However, I'm willing to give them a little extra attention because they have actually said some things I really like, right? Just the idea of games with an ending, and there's room for single-player story-driven games in gaming, and they can kind of coexist with live service and whatnot. They're saying all the right things. And then, as I said, the demo is not the entire game, and it doesn't give you a sense of the entire game, but it gives you a little bit. And in the demo, I think it's kind of clear that this is going to be a game that's for me. And for me, it reminds me of some older type games where it's a little open, an area you can explore, you can climb, you can drop, but for the most part, right, it's an objective to an objective. You'll fight enemies, there's cutscenes, there's a final boss, it moves on to the next thing. It sounds like it'll open up because there's a city eventually and there'll be side quests that you can do or not do depending on what you want. So it probably will grow a little, but it does remind me of a little bit of an old type kind of game, a little bit more linear, a little bit more where it is going to rely primarily on story, which is yet to be determined how good it is. Story, characters, and gameplay. I think gameplay they got checked off for sure. The other two is debatable. When the game comes out, we'll find out, right? But I like these kind of games. So in terms of just how the game is literally set up for us, I'm happy with that. And the 5th one is a little bit of a cop-out, but I figured I would make this a 5 list. 4 lists are kind of weird, right? So 5 list. April. Why you should be excited for this game? Well, look at the games in April. Not a lot of them. Now, different people are into different games. That's totally true. But I think it's hard to deny if you look at any release schedule or you just look at the games that have come out so far. You go through January, you go through February and March, which were literal gauntlets, right? If you go through those and then you look at April, you tell me which had the more packed month. So all I'm really saying here, I believe, and it's probably a bias of mine, but I believe Stellar Blade is the biggest game of April. And also, selfishly for me, it's kind of the one. I can't honestly look at you in the face, even though, I'm not showing my face in this video, but I can't actually look at you straight and say, yeah, I'm going to get 6 games this month. No, it really is looking kind of like Stellar Blade. Now, again, that's just me. Other people are going to have different tastes, but I would say the window in which this game is releasing is kind of perfect timing. It doesn't really have to compete with, I know Sandland comes out the same day, very different type game, I would argue. I really just don't think this game has competition. Whereas if it came out March 15th, March 20th, it would have Dragon's Dogma, it'd have Rise of the Ronin, and it would have a stacked thing against it. Even if those games are different from each other, which they are, it still would be competing. Whereas now, there's really not a lot it's competing with. And then even afterwards, you go into May, the big game of May, in my opinion, is Hellblade. Hellblade and Stellar Blade, which is funny to have this similar kind of title, they're about a month separated from each other, and I think they're the 2 biggest things in their respective months. So I think they got plenty of room to breathe, and just, they're going to sink or swim based off their own success, if the game is good or not, right? But they really don't have to fight with any other game out there. I think that's a benefit for both of them. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. We'll, of course, be continuing our coverage on Stellar Blade here, and I hope to see you all on the next one.